The pounding on his cabin door came just after midnight, desperate fists hammering against the rough timber like someone fleeing the devil himself. Logan Everett grabbed his rifle from above the fireplace and moved cautiously through the darkness of his mountain home, every sense alert to danger in this remote corner of the Arizona territory. When he yanked open the door, he expected outlaws or injured miners, not the woman who nearly collapsed into his arms, her dress torn and muddy, her dark hair wild around her pale face, and her eyes wide with terror that made his chest tighten with unexpected protectiveness. She stumbled forward and he caught her by the shoulders, steadying her against his chest as she gasped for breath. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse and desperate, "please help me. They're coming. They'll kill me like they killed Samuel." Logan pulled her inside quickly and barred the door, setting his rifle within easy reach. He guided her to the chair by the fireplace where the embers still glowed faintly, then stirred the coals and added fresh wood. Light bloomed across the cabin, illuminating her face properly for the first time. She was younger than he had first thought, perhaps 25 or 26, with delicate features now marked by exhaustion and fear. Blood stained her torn sleeves and he could see scratches across her arms from running through brush. "Who's coming?" he asked, his voice low and calm despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Who's Samuel?" "My husband," she said, and her voice broke on the word. "Samuel Peterson, he's dead. They shot him 3 days ago outside Tucson. We had a claim, copper and silver both. They wanted it. When Samuel refused to sell, they just took it. They killed him right there in front of me and I ran. I've been running ever since." Logan's jaw tightened. He knew the type she was talking about. The Arizona Territory in 1881 was full of men who believed might made right, who took what they wanted and left bodies in their wake. The law was scarce this far from town, and what law existed could often be bought. "You're safe here," he said firmly, moving to the window to scan the darkness outside. "Nobody knows this cabin exists except the Apaches who used to hunt these mountains, and they don't bother me. How many men are after you?" 4, maybe 5. "The leader's name is Garrett Moss. He has cold eyes and a scar across his throat." She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the growing warmth from the fire. "I heard them talking after they shot Samuel. They said they couldn't leave witnesses. They've been tracking me ever since I ran." "Garrett Moss," Logan repeated, and something dark flickered across his face. "I know him. He's bad news, runs with a gang that's been causing trouble from here to the New Mexico border. But he won't find you here. This mountain is mine, and I know every inch of it." The woman looked up at him properly for the first time, taking in his appearance. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell past his collar and a thick beard that couldn't hide the strong lines of his jaw. His eyes were a striking gray-blue, intelligent and steady. He wore simple clothes, homespun pants and a worn shirt, but he moved with the confidence of a man completely at ease in his environment. She judged him to be around 30, maybe a year or two older. "I'm Penelope Peterson," she said quietly. "Thank you for taking me in. I have nowhere else to go." "Logan Everett," he replied, then moved to his small kitchen area. "When did you last eat?" "I don't remember. Yesterday morning, I think. I found some berries." He built up the fire properly and set about making coffee and heating up venison stew he had made the day before. While he worked, Penelope looked around the cabin. It was larger than it had seemed from outside. One big room with a sleeping area separated by a curtain, a small kitchen, and a sitting area by the fireplace. The walls were lined with shelves holding books, tools, and various supplies. Animal pelts hung on one wall, and she could see traps and hunting equipment stored neatly in one corner. Everything was clean and well organized, surprising her. She had expected a mountain man's home to be rough and filthy, but this showed signs of careful attention. "How long have you lived here?" she asked. "5 years. Built the cabin myself." He poured coffee into 2 tin cups and handed her one. "I came west after the war. Couldn't stomach cities anymore. Couldn't stomach being around people who thought killing was something to celebrate. Found this mountain and decided it was far enough from everything." "The war," she repeated softly. "You fought." "With the Union, yes. Saw things I'd rather forget. The wilderness is cleaner, more honest. An animal kills to eat or protect itself, not for ideology or profit." He ladled stew into a bowl and gave it to her along with a spoon. "Eat slowly. Your stomach won't handle much after 3 days of running." Penelope took the bowl with trembling hands and found the food was rich and flavorful, seasoned with herbs she could not identify. She forced herself to eat slowly as he had instructed, though her body screamed for her to devour it all at once. Logan sat across from her, sipping his coffee and watching the door and windows with the alertness of a predator. "You really think they won't find me here?" she asked between careful bites. "The trail up this mountain is hidden and dangerous if you don't know the way. I've got trip wires set at 3 different points that will alert me if anyone tries to approach. Even if Moss has good trackers, they'll have lost your trail miles back." "You left tracks through the creek bed," she nodded. "I remembered Samuel saying water hides your scent from dogs and makes tracking harder. Your husband was smart. I'm sorry for what happened to him." Tears filled Penelope's eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. "We had been married only 8 months. We came west from Pennsylvania for a fresh start. Samuel was a mining engineer, educated. He found that claim legitimately, filed all the proper papers in Tucson. We were going to build a real life here. And Garrett Moss decided he wanted what your husband had worked for," Logan said, his voice hard with anger. "It's a common story out here, unfortunately. The law doesn't reach far enough to stop men like him." "Is there no justice at all?" Penelope asked, her voice breaking. "Samuel was a good man. He never hurt anyone. He just wanted to make an honest living." Logan was quiet for a moment, staring into his coffee. "There's the justice men make with laws and courts, and then there's the justice of consequence. Moss will get his eventually. Men like that always do. They push too far, anger the wrong person, make one mistake too many. The wilderness has a way of settling scores. But Samuel won't come back," she whispered. "No, and I'm sorry for that." Logan set down his cup and leaned forward, his expression serious. "But you survived. You got away from 5 armed men through miles of wilderness, and you found help. That takes strength and intelligence. Your husband would want you to use that strength to keep living." Penelope met his eyes and saw genuine compassion there, mixed with something else she could not quite identify. Respect, perhaps. She had expected a mountain hermit to be gruff and unwelcoming, but Logan Everett spoke with education and feeling. There was depth to him. "What will I do?" she asked. "I have nothing now. No money, no home, no way to file a claim against Moss since he'd probably just kill me if I went back to Tucson. I don't even have family to return to back east. My parents died of fever 2 years ago, and Samuel was an only child like me." "First, you'll rest and recover your strength," Logan said firmly. "Then we'll figure out the rest. You're welcome to stay here as long as you need. I don't get visitors and I keep to myself, but I've got plenty of supplies and the hunting is good. You'll be safe." "I can't impose on you like that," Penelope protested, though her voice lacked conviction. She had nowhere else to go and they both knew it. "It's not an imposition. This cabin gets lonely sometimes, truth be told. I chose solitude, but I'm still human. Having another person to talk to might be pleasant." He stood and moved to the curtained area. "You'll take the bed. I'll sleep out here by the fire." "No, I couldn't take your bed. You're exhausted and you've been through hell. I've slept on worse than a floor. It's settled." His tone made it clear there would be no argument. Penelope finished her stew and coffee, feeling warmth spread through her body for the first time in days. The food and heat were making her realize just how exhausted she truly was. Her legs felt like lead and her eyes kept wanting to close. Logan noticed and gestured toward the curtained area. "There's a basin of water and clean cloths. I'll heat some water for washing if you can wait a few minutes. I've got a spare shirt that will work as a nightdress for now. Tomorrow I'll see about making you some proper clothes." "You know how to sew?" she asked, surprised. "I know how to do what needs doing. Can't rely on anyone else up here." He was already working the pump to fill a pot, which he hung over the fire. Living alone teaches you to be resourceful. While the water heated, Penelope stood on shaky legs and moved to look out the window. Dawn was still hours away and the darkness outside was complete. She could see nothing beyond the glass, just her own reflection pale and haunted. The terror of the past 3 days was starting to catch up with her now that she was finally safe. Samuel's face kept appearing in her mind, the moment when Moss had shot him, the way he had fallen. "Come away from the window," Logan said quietly, startling her. He had moved up behind her without making a sound. "Don't make yourself a target even here." She stepped back and he closed the shutters, securing them with a wooden bar. "Sorry," she murmured. "I wasn't thinking. You're in shock. It's understandable." He tested the water and deemed it ready, pouring half into a large bowl and setting it on the small table behind the curtain. "Take your time. I'll be out here if you need anything." Penelope slipped behind the curtain and found herself in Logan's private space. The bed was neatly made with thick blankets and a patchwork quilt. A small chest sat at the foot of the bed, and a few pegs on the wall held spare clothes. Everything smelled of pine and wood smoke, and something distinctly masculine that was not unpleasant. She found the shirt he had mentioned laid out on the bed, soft flannel worn smooth with age and washing. She stripped off her ruined dress and undergarments, washing away 3 days of fear and flight with the warm water and a rough cloth. Her body was covered in scratches and bruises, her feet blistered and bleeding from running in thin shoes that had not been made for wilderness travel. She tended to the wounds as best she could, then pulled on Logan's shirt. It fell nearly to her knees, the shoulders hanging off her much smaller frame, but it was clean and warm. When she emerged from behind the curtain, Logan was laying out blankets near the fire. He glanced up and then quickly away, something in his expression shifting. Penelope realized she must look quite improper, wearing nothing but his shirt with her hair loose and damp around her shoulders, but she was too tired to care about propriety. "The bed is comfortable," he said, focusing on arranging his makeshift bedroll. "You should sleep as long as you need. Don't worry about waking early, there's no schedule up here." "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. You didn't have to help me." "Yes, I did," he replied, finally meeting her eyes again. "No decent man would turn away someone in need. Now get some rest. You're safe here, I promise." Penelope wanted to say more, to express the depth of her gratitude, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a physical weight. She retreated behind the curtain and climbed into Logan's bed, pulling the quilts up to her chin. The mattress was stuffed with something soft, probably dried grass or pine needles, and the blankets were heavy and warm. She could hear Logan moving around quietly in the main room, the crackle of the fire, the settling of the cabin around her. For the first time since Samuel's death, she felt the tight knot of terror in her chest begin to loosen. She was safe. Logan Everett, a stranger who had opened his door at midnight, had given her sanctuary without asking for anything in return. As she drifted toward sleep, She found herself wondering about this mountain man who lived alone by choice, who spoke with education and moved with predatory grace, who had kind eyes despite whatever horrors he had seen in the war. The last thing she remembered was the sound of Logan checking his rifle, the quiet snick of metal on metal as he ensured it was ready, standing guard while she slept. Penelope woke to sunlight filtering through cracks in the shuttered window and the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment she was disoriented, forgetting where she was, and then the memories crashed back. Samuel's death, her desperate flight, finding Logan's cabin in the darkness. She sat up slowly, her body stiff and sore from running and sleeping so hard. Every muscle seemed to protest movement. She could hear Logan moving around beyond the curtain, the sizzle of food cooking and the clink of dishes. Penelope looked around for her dress and then remembered how ruined it had been. She would have to wear Logan's shirt until he could fashion her something else. The thought of going without proper undergarments made her face heat with embarrassment, but there was nothing to be done about it. She pushed the curtain aside and found Logan at the stove, cooking breakfast. He had bathed and changed, his hair damp and pulled back from his face. He glanced over when he heard her, "Morning. Hope I didn't wake you. Breakfast is almost ready." "What time is it?" Penelope asked, realizing the light seemed quite bright. "Past noon, actually. You slept 14 hours. Your body needed it." He plated up bacon and eggs, then sliced thick pieces from a loaf of bread. "Come eat." Penelope joined him at the small table and was again impressed by the quality of the food. The eggs were perfectly cooked and the bacon was crisp and flavorful. "Where did you get all this?" she asked. "I thought you lived off hunting." "I do mostly, but I'm not completely isolated. I trade pelts and herbs in Tucson a few times a year for staples like flour, coffee, and salt. I keep chickens for eggs and I smoke or preserve meat for winter. The bread I make myself." He poured coffee for both of them. "It's a simple life, but I eat well enough." "It's delicious," Penelope said sincerely. "Better than many meals I had in town." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, then Logan said, "I want to ask you some questions about Moss and his gang." "If you're up for it." Penelope set down her fork and nodded, though her stomach clenched with anxiety. "What do you want to know? You said there were 4 or 5 men. Did you get a good look at any of them besides Moss?" "2 of them, yes. One was tall and thin with red hair and a mustache. He wore a black hat with a silver band. The other was shorter and heavy with a scar on his left cheek and missing teeth. I didn't see the others clearly." Logan nodded thoughtfully. "The redhead is probably Daniel Cross. The heavy one sounds like Jake Miller, both known associates of Moss. They're wanted for robbery and murder in New Mexico. If the law won't help you directly, at least you can identify some wanted men if it comes to that." "Do you think it will come to that? Do you think they'll find me?" "Honestly, no. Like I said, this mountain is remote and the trail is hidden. But I won't lie to you, Moss is persistent when he wants something. He might keep looking for you, worried you'll identify him to the law. We need to be cautious." Logan studied her face across the table. "How much did your husband tell you about the claim?" "Do you know where it is exactly, what the assay showed?" "It's about 15 miles northeast of Tucson in the foothills. Samuel said the assay showed good copper deposits and a vein of silver that could be quite valuable. He had all the papers with him when they killed him. I assume Moss took them." "So Moss now has legal documentation of the claim in your husband's name. He can't use that directly without raising questions, but he could forge a transfer or just work the claim illegally and hope no one notices. The land office in Tucson is not exactly rigorous about enforcement." Logan drummed his fingers on the table, thinking. "Your husband filed the claim in both your names." "No, just his. I wanted him to, but he said there was no need. We were married, so what was his was mine." Her voice turned bitter. Now I have no legal right to any of it. That's not entirely true. As his widow, you inherit his property unless he had a will stating otherwise. But you'd need to prove the claim was his and that you're his legal widow, which means going back to Tucson with documentation. Do you have your marriage certificate? I had it in my carpet bag, but I dropped that when I was running. I don't even know where I lost it. Logan considered this. Where did you and Samuel get married? What church or official? We were married in Santa Fe by a judge named Morrison. Samuel said it was more legal than a church ceremony and the papers would be registered properly. Judge Morrison is still there as far as I know. If you wrote to him, he could send a copy of the marriage record. That's something, at least. Logan stood and began clearing the dishes. But all of that is for later. Right now you need to recover and stay safe. I'll teach you how to handle a gun, show you the mountains so you know the territory. If something happens to me, you need to be able to survive on your own. The thought of something happening to Logan sent an unexpected spike of fear through Penelope. This man was the only thing standing between her and Garrett Moss, between her and death. But it was more than that, she realized. In less than a day, Logan had shown her more practical kindness than many people she had known for years. There was something solid and dependable about him that made her feel secure. "I've never shot a gun," she admitted. "Samuel tried to teach me once, but I was afraid of it." Fear of a gun is healthy, but you need to overcome it enough to use one if necessary. A gun is just a tool. It's the person holding it that matters. He moved to a cabinet and pulled out a pistol, checking to make sure it was unloaded before handing it to her. "This is a Colt revolver. Feel the weight of it. Get used to how it sits in your hand." Penelope took the gun gingerly, surprised by how heavy it was. The metal was cold and the grip worn smooth from use. Logan moved behind her and adjusted her grip, his hands warm and calloused against hers. She was very aware of his presence, his height and strength as he stood close enough for her to feel the heat of his body. "Your finger stays off the trigger until you're ready to fire," he said, his voice low and patient. "Point it at the ground or in a safe direction, never at anything you don't intend to shoot. When you do aim, you bring it up smooth and sight down the barrel. Squeeze the trigger, don't pull it. The gun will kick back, so be ready for that." He spent the next hour teaching her the basics of gun safety and handling, never once making her feel foolish for her ignorance. When he was satisfied she understood the fundamentals, he put the gun away and said they would practice shooting the next day when she was more rested. The afternoon passed quietly. Logan worked on various tasks around the cabin, repairing a trap and sharpening knives, while Penelope rested and watched. She found herself studying him when she thought he was not paying attention. There was economy in his movements, nothing wasted, everything purposeful. His hands were strong and scarred but capable of surprising delicacy. When he noticed her watching, he did not seem bothered, just gave her a small smile and continued working. As evening approached, Logan announced he was going to check his traps and snares, and that she should bar the door behind him and not open it for anyone but him. He showed her the pattern of knocks he would use when he returned. "Will you be long?" Penelope asked, trying not to sound as anxious as she felt at the thought of being alone. "A few hours at most. I need to check the trip wires too, make sure no one has been poking around. You'll be fine. The rifle is loaded and leaning by the door. You remember how to use it." "Point, sight, squeeze," she recited. "Don't pull. Good. I'll be back before dark." He pulled on a heavy coat and grabbed a pack, then paused at the door. "Penelope, I need you to trust me. I wouldn't leave if I thought there was any danger, but I need to make sure we're still alone up here." "I trust you," she said, and realized she meant it completely. Logan's expression softened and he nodded, then slipped out the door. Penelope barred it behind him as instructed and stood in the sudden silence of the cabin. She had been alone in her house in Tucson plenty of times when Samuel was working the claim, but this felt different. This was wilderness, and somewhere out there were men who wanted her dead. She forced herself to move, to keep busy. She washed the dishes from breakfast and lunch, then explored the cabin more thoroughly. Logan's books surprised her. They were not the dime novels or practical manuals she had expected, but real literature. Shakespeare, Whitman, Thoreau, even some philosophy. She pulled down Walden and settled by the fire to read, finding comfort in the familiar words. Time passed, and the light through the shutters began to fade. Penelope found herself listening for Logan's return, starting at every small sound. When the knock finally came in the pattern he had shown her, she rushed to unbar the door. Logan entered carrying 2 rabbits and looking satisfied. Everything's clear. No signs of anyone approaching the mountain. I think we're safe for now. He hung up his coat and set about preparing the rabbits for dinner. How was your afternoon? Quiet. I read some of your Thoreau. I didn't think a mountain man would have such a library. I wasn't always a mountain man, Logan said with a slight smile. I was raised in Boston, educated at a good school. My father was a lawyer and my mother was a teacher. They had expectations for me, a nice, comfortable life planned out. Then the war came and I enlisted, thinking it would be an adventure. I learned differently quick enough. What happened? Penelope asked softly. Logan was quiet for a long moment, skinning the rabbits with practiced efficiency. I saw good men do terrible things because they were ordered to. I saw boys younger than they should have been die screaming for their mothers. I killed people, Penelope. Maybe people who deserved it, maybe not. I stopped being able to tell the difference between right and wrong, justice and murder. When the war ended, I couldn't go back to Boston and pretend to be civilized. So I came west, kept going until I found a place where I could be alone and try to figure out who I was without all the death. Did you figure it out? She asked gently. I'm still working on it. But I know I'd rather be here, living honest and simple, than back there living a lie. He looked up at her and their eyes met. Does it bother you, knowing I've killed people? In war? Penelope shook her head. My father fought too, though he never spoke of it. Samuel said his father had nightmares until the day he died from things he saw in battle. War makes monsters of good men, my mother used to say. What matters is who you choose to be after. Something in Logan's expression eased, as if he had been holding tension he had not known was there. Your mother was wise. They prepared dinner together, Penelope following Logan's instructions to make biscuits while he cooked the rabbit with wild onions and herbs. The domesticity of it felt strange and comfortable at the same time. Penelope realized this was the longest conversation she had had with a man other than Samuel in months. Logan was different from her husband. Samuel had been educated and kind, but he had also been practical and sometimes distant, focused on his work. Logan was fully present, giving her his complete attention when they spoke, and there was an intensity to him that Samuel had lacked. She felt guilty for comparing them, for thinking anything about Logan when Samuel had been dead less than a week. But she could not help noticing things. The way Logan moved, the sound of his voice, the unexpected gentleness in his calloused hands when he adjusted her grip on the gun. She told herself it was just gratitude, just the natural response to being rescued, nothing more. After dinner, they sat by the fire and Logan asked her about her life before the West. Penelope found herself talking more than she had intended, telling him about growing up in Pennsylvania, her father's store, her mother's love of books and learning. She spoke about meeting Samuel at a church social, how his plans to seek his fortune out west had seemed exciting and romantic. Was it a good marriage? Logan asked quietly. Penelope considered the question honestly. It was fine. Samuel was a good man and I cared for him. But I don't know if we truly loved each other, not the way I always imagined love should be. We were companions, partners. It seemed like enough. And now I don't know what I feel besides lost and scared. I know I should be drowning in grief and part of me is. But another part is just numb, like it hasn't really hit me yet that he's gone and I'm alone. You're not alone, Logan said firmly. You're here and you're safe, and you have time to figure out what comes next. There's no rush, no pressure. Grieve however you need to grieve. Penelope felt tears prick her eyes at the simple kindness in his words. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I did to deserve finding you, but I'm grateful." Logan looked uncomfortable with the gratitude, as if he did not know how to accept it. He changed the subject to practical matters, discussing what she would need in terms of clothes and supplies. He had material he had been planning to use for shirts that could be made into a dress, and he thought he could fashion moccasins that would fit her better than her ruined shoes. As the evening wore on, Penelope found herself growing drowsy despite having slept so long that morning. Her body was still recovering from the ordeal of running. Logan noticed and shooed her toward the bed, insisting she rest. This time she was too tired to argue. The next several days fell into a pattern. Penelope would wake to find Logan already up and working, breakfast ready. They would eat together, and then he would teach her essential skills. Shooting, which she gradually became more comfortable with, hitting a target Logan set up in a clearing behind the cabin. Identifying edible plants and dangerous ones, how to read animal tracks, how to start a fire with flint and steel. He showed her the mountain, the hidden trails and the places where springs bubbled up with cold, clear water. He taught her to think like prey and like predator both, to be aware of her surroundings and trust her instincts. Logan was a patient teacher, never condescending, always respectful of her intelligence. When she made mistakes, he corrected her gently. When she succeeded, his praise was sincere. Penelope found herself eager to learn, partly because the skills might save her life, but also because she enjoyed spending time with him. She learned small things about Logan as they worked together. He had a dry sense of humor that caught her by surprise. He could identify dozens of plants by sight and knew their medicinal properties. He played harmonica in the evenings, sang beautiful songs that spoke of loneliness and longing. He had traded with the Apaches who occasionally passed through and spoke a little of their language, respecting them as the original inhabitants of this land. He read voraciously, having traded pelts for books whenever he went to town. In turn, Logan learned about Penelope. Her quick mind and quicker wit, her determination not to be helpless, her love of learning that matched his own. She had a good singing voice and knew dozens of old songs her mother had taught her. She was practical and adaptable, not given to hysterics or helplessness despite what she had been through. She had strong opinions about politics and justice, believing firmly in equality and fairness. They talked late into the nights, conversations ranging from philosophy to practical matters to silly stories from their childhoods. Logan found himself looking forward to these evenings, to the sound of Penelope's voice and her laughter. The cabin felt less lonely with her in it, warmer somehow despite the fire burning the same as always. One evening, about 2 weeks after Penelope's arrival, Logan was working on sewing a dress for her, while she read aloud from one of his books. She had protested that she should be the one sewing, but Logan had waved her off, saying he found the work soothing. The dress was taking shape nicely, a simple design but well constructed. He had turned out to have a real talent for it, his stitches small and even. "Logan," Penelope said suddenly, setting down the book. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course," he replied, not looking up from his work. "Why did you really come up here? You said it was because of the war, but there must be more to it than that. You're educated, capable. You could have done anything, gone anywhere. Why choose to be alone?" Logan's hands stilled on the fabric. He was quiet for so long Penelope thought he would not answer. Finally, he said, "There was a woman. Her name was Margaret. We were engaged before I went to war. I thought about her every day while I was fighting, imagined the life we would have together when I got home. It kept me going through the worst of it." "What happened?" Penelope asked gently. "When I came back, I was different. Angry, haunted, drinking too much. I had nightmares, woke up screaming. Margaret tried to help, tried to be patient, but I pushed her away. I was cruel to her in ways I'm still ashamed of. Eventually she left, married a banker who could give her the life she deserved. I don't blame her. I was drowning and I was going to take her down with me." He finally looked up, his eyes haunted. "So I came west to stop hurting people I cared about, figured I could only hurt myself out here. Did it work? Did the solitude help? Yes and no. The nightmares are less frequent. I stopped drinking. I found a kind of peace in living simple and close to the land. But I also spent 5 years telling myself I was better off alone, that I didn't deserve connection or companionship. And now you're here, and I'm realizing maybe I was wrong about that." Penelope's heart was beating faster. "What do you mean?" Logan set down the dress and met her eyes across the fire. "I mean that having you here has reminded me what it's like to care about someone, to want to make someone smile, to look forward to talking with them. I know it's too soon after your husband's death. I know you probably see me as just someone who helped you. But I need you to know that you've become important to me, Penelope, more important than I expected." "Logan," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I feel it too. I've been trying not to because it seems wrong, disrespectful to Samuel's memory. But when I'm with you, I feel safe and seen in ways I never did before. You listen to me like what I say matters. You teach me like you trust my ability to learn. You look at me like I'm strong instead of fragile." "You are strong," Logan said intensely. "Stronger than you know. You survived something that would have broken many people. You're smart and brave and beautiful, and spending time with you has made me happier than I've been in years." They stared at each other across the flickering firelight, the air between them charged with possibility. Penelope stood slowly and crossed to where Logan sat, her heart pounding. He stood to meet her, towering over her smaller frame, his eyes searching her face. "Is this wrong?" she asked quietly. "Samuel has been dead less than a month." "I don't know," Logan admitted. "But I know life is short and uncertain, especially out here. I know that you're alive and I'm alive and what we feel is real. If that's wrong, I'll apologize for it, but I won't pretend I don't feel it." Penelope reached up and placed her hand against Logan's bearded cheek. His hand came up to cover hers, his touch warm and gentle despite the roughness of his palm. "Samuel would want me to be happy," she said slowly, working through her feelings. "He wasn't a jealous or spiteful man. He would want me to live, to find joy again. And you make me feel alive, Logan. When I'm with you, I'm not just surviving. I'm living." Logan turned his head and pressed a kiss to her palm, his eyes never leaving hers. "I don't want to rush you. I don't want you to regret this later." "I won't regret it," Penelope said with certainty. "I've spent my whole life doing what was proper and expected. I married Samuel because it seemed like the right thing to do, the smart choice. But this, what I feel for you, this isn't about shoulds or propriety. This is real." Logan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her and holding her against his chest. Penelope could hear his heart beating, steady and strong. She felt his lips brush the top of her head, tender and asking permission. She tilted her face up to him in answer. The kiss was gentle at first, careful, as if they were both afraid of breaking something precious. But then Penelope pressed closer and Logan's arms tightened around her, and the kiss deepened into something more urgent. There was hunger in it, and loneliness finally finding solace in the beginning of something that felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Logan rested his forehead against Penelope's, his hands cradling her face. "Stay with me," he said roughly. "Not just until you're safe, not just until you figure out what comes next. Stay with me because you want to be here." "I want to be here," Penelope said, the words coming from somewhere deep and honest inside her. "I want to be with you. I don't know how this happened so fast, but it feels right in a way nothing else ever has." They held each other by the fire, neither wanting to let go. Eventually, Logan pulled back enough to look at her seriously. "There are things we need to figure out, practical things. You're legally still Samuel's widow and have a right to his claim. We should pursue that, get you what's rightfully yours. But doing that means going back to Tucson, which means possible danger from Moss." "I don't care about the claim," Penelope said. "Let Moss have it. I just want to be safe and alive." "It's not about the money or the silver," Logan argued. "It's about justice. Your husband was murdered for that claim. Letting Moss profit from that murder is wrong. And beyond that, as long as Moss thinks you might come back and cause trouble, you're not truly safe. We need to resolve this." "How?" Penelope asked. "It's my word against his, and he has 4 or 5 armed men backing him up. The law won't help me." "The law might not, but there are other ways. I have friends, believe it or not. Men I traded with. Apaches who remember that I dealt fairly with them. Even a few decent souls in Tucson who owe me favors. We can build a case against Moss, gather witnesses, maybe find evidence of his other crimes. If we're smart and careful, we can bring him down without getting you killed in the process." Penelope studied Logan's determined face and felt a surge of affection. He was willing to help her seek justice, to risk himself for her. But more than that, he believed she deserved justice. He believed her life and her rights mattered. "You would do that for me?" she asked. "I would do anything for you," Logan said simply. "But we do it smart, not rash. First we make sure you're safe and prepared. Then we gather information, then we act." "Agreed." "Agreed," Penelope said, then added, "Partner." Logan smiled, that rare, beautiful smile that transformed his serious face. "Partner," he agreed and kissed her again. That night Penelope did not sleep alone behind the curtain. Logan held her through the darkness, both of them fully clothed but wrapped in each other's arms, talking quietly until they drifted into sleep. For the first time since Samuel's death, Penelope's dreams were peaceful. The next few weeks brought a shift in the cabin's atmosphere. The growing affection between Logan and Penelope was no longer unspoken or ignored. They moved around each other with new awareness, finding excuses to touch, hands brushing as they passed. Logan's hand on the small of Penelope's back as he guided her on the trails. Penelope's fingers combing through Logan's hair as they sat by the fire in the evenings. They were careful with each other in ways that went beyond physical propriety. Both had been hurt, both had reasons to be cautious. But the connection between them grew stronger each day, built on genuine friendship and respect as much as attraction. Logan continued teaching Penelope wilderness skills, but now they also made plans. Logan had decided they would go to Tucson, but not directly and not unprepared. First, he would send word through his Apache contacts, asking them to watch the trails and report on Moss's movements. Then he would reach out to a few people he knew in town, feeling out the situation. Only when they had intelligence would they make their move. In the meantime, life on the mountain took on a quality that Penelope could only describe as happy. She had never imagined finding happiness so soon after tragedy, but there it was. She woke each morning eager to see Logan, to learn what he would teach her that day, to hear his voice and his rare laughter. The physical work of mountain living made her strong, her hands growing calloused, her muscles developing definition they had never had before. Logan showed her how to hunt, taking her with him on tracking expeditions. She proved to be a good shot once she overcame her fear of the gun, patient and steady. The first time she brought down a deer herself, Logan's pride in her was evident, and she felt a surge of accomplishment that was entirely new to her. One evening about a month after Penelope's arrival, Logan received visitors. Two Apache men appeared at the tree line near the cabin, calling out in their language. Logan went to meet them, greeting them with obvious respect and friendship. They spoke for several minutes, then Logan invited them to the cabin for food and coffee. Penelope felt nervous as the two men entered, but they greeted her politely and accepted the meal she helped Logan prepare without comment. The older of the two was named Kurok, the younger his nephew Takoda. They spoke a mix of English, Spanish, and their own language, with Logan translating when needed. Kurok told them that Garrett Moss and his men had indeed been searching for Penelope, but had given up after about a week, assuming she had died in the wilderness. Moss had returned to the claim he had stolen and was working it with a crew of men, selling the ore through contacts in Tucson who did not ask too many questions. The local law, such as it was, had no interest in investigating a dead miner's claim. But there is more, Kurok said, his weathered face serious. Moss and his men, they attack a freight wagon 2 weeks ago, kill the driver and guard, take supplies. They grow bold, think no one will stop them. Logan's jaw tightened. That's new. Moss was careful before, stayed just inside the law. If he's turned to outright banditry, he's more dangerous than I thought. Also more vulnerable, Penelope pointed out. If there are witnesses to the wagon attack, if there's proof, that's evidence that might interest the law more than one miner's death. Logan looked at her with approval. You're right. Kurok, do you know if anyone survived the attack? Any witnesses? Kurok shook his head. Both men dead, but the freight company, they want justice. They offer reward for information on who did it. How much? Logan asked. $200. Logan and Penelope exchanged glances. $200 was serious money, enough that even corrupt lawmen might take an interest if there was evidence. If we could prove Moss did it, Penelope said slowly, that might be our chance. The freight company would push for prosecution, and it wouldn't just be about a mining claim anymore. It's also more dangerous, Logan warned. If Moss knows we're gathering evidence against him, he won't hesitate to kill us both. So we're careful, Penelope said. Like you said, we're smart about this. They talked long into the night with Kurok and Takoda, piecing together what was known about Moss's activities. The Apache men agreed to continue watching and listening, to report back if they learned anything useful. When they left the next morning, laden with supplies Logan insisted they take, Kurok clasped Logan's arm and spoke seriously in his own language. Logan nodded solemnly. After they had gone, Penelope asked what Kurok had said. Logan was quiet for a moment, then replied, "He said I have found a strong woman and that strong women make their men stronger. He said I should keep you safe because you are precious." "He's very wise," Penelope said softly. "Yes, he is." Logan pulled her close, holding her against his chest. "You are precious, Penelope. To me, and not just to me, you matter, your life matters. What happened to Samuel was wrong and we're going to make it right, but you have to promise me something." "What?" "If it comes down to a choice between justice and your safety, we choose safety. Always." "Nothing is worth losing you." Penelope felt tears sting her eyes. Samuel had cared for her, she knew, but he had never spoken with such fierce protectiveness. He had never made her feel irreplaceable. "I promise," she said, "but the same goes for you. I won't let you get killed playing hero." "Deal," Logan agreed and sealed it with a kiss. Over the next 2 weeks, they received 2 more visits from Takota, each time bringing new information. Moss had been seen in Tucson, spending money freely and drinking in the saloons. He had boasted to someone about a big freight score, enough to keep him in luxury for months. One of Moss's men, the heavyset one with missing teeth that Penelope had identified as Jake Miller, had been seen wearing a distinctive watch that had belonged to the murdered freight driver. "That's evidence," Penelope said excitedly when Takota told them this. "If we can get the watch, if the freight company can identify it as their driver's watch, that connects Moss's gang directly to the murder." "Getting the watch means getting close to Miller," Logan said. "That means going to Tucson. Are you ready for that?" Penelope took a deep breath. The thought of leaving the safety of the mountain, of possibly encountering Moss or his men, made her heart race with fear. But she had grown stronger in her time with Logan, both physically and mentally. She was not the terrified widow who had pounded on his door in the middle of the night. She was someone different now, someone capable. "I'm ready," she said. "But we need a plan. I can't just walk into town. Someone might recognize me." They spent days working out the details. Penelope would disguise herself as a man, dressed in Logan's spare clothes with her hair tucked under a hat. She had filled out somewhat from regular meals and hard work, and bound properly, she could pass for a slim young man at a distance. They would enter town separately, Logan going in first to scout the situation and make contact with his sources. Penelope would follow a day later, meeting him at a predetermined location. The night before they were to leave, Logan presented Penelope with the dress he had been working on. It was finished now, a practical garment of sturdy brown fabric with simple lines but expert construction. "For after," he said. "When this is done and it's safe, I want to see you wear it properly, not hiding who you are." Penelope held the dress against herself, touched by the thought and care he had put into it. "It's beautiful, Logan, thank you." "You're beautiful," he replied, then pulled her into his arms. "Penelope, before we do this, before we walk into danger, I need to say something." "What is it?" "I love you. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a short time. But it's true. Somewhere between you arriving desperate at my door and now, you became the most important thing in my life. I love your courage and your intelligence and your kindness. I love how you sing while you work and how you laugh at my stupid jokes. I love who I am when I'm with you. I needed you to know that, whatever happens." Penelope felt her heart swell until she thought it might burst. "I love you too," she said, the words simple but weighted with truth. "I didn't think I could feel this way, not so soon after losing Samuel. But what I feel for you is different from anything I felt before. It's bigger, deeper. You've given me back my life, Logan. You've made me strong, you've made me happy. I love you." They made love that night for the first time, tender and passionate, 2 wounded people finding healing in each other's arms. Penelope had been with Samuel, but this was different. With Logan, there was a sense of being truly seen and valued, of being an equal partner. Afterward, they lay tangled together, talking quietly about the future they hoped to have once this was done. "I want to marry you properly," Logan said, his fingers tracing patterns on Penelope's bare shoulder. "I know it's too soon to speak of it publicly. You need time to grieve and observe mourning customs. But in my heart, you're already my wife. I want to build a life with you, whether here on the mountain or somewhere else if you'd rather. I want children with you if you want them. I want to grow old with you." "Yes to all of it," Penelope said, her voice thick with emotion. "And I want to be here on this mountain. It's become home to me. I don't need cities or society or anything but this, but us." They held each other through the night, storing up warmth and connection against the danger that waited below. The ride down from the mountain took most of the day, following trails only Logan knew. They went on foot, leading Logan's horse loaded with pelts and goods to trade. This would be Logan's excuse for being in town, his regular trading trip. No one would think it unusual. They camped the last night before town in a secluded canyon. Logan went over the plan again and again, making sure Penelope knew where to meet him and what to do if something went wrong. "If I'm not at the meeting point by noon tomorrow, you go back to the cabin," he insisted. "Don't wait, don't try to find me, just go back to safety." "I'm not leaving you," Penelope argued. "If something happens, we face it together." They compromised. She would wait until evening, but if he had not appeared by sunset, she would assume the worst and make her way back to the mountain. Neither was happy with this plan, but it was the best they had. Logan entered Tucson the next morning, looking like what he was, a mountain man come to trade. The town had grown since his last visit 6 months ago. New buildings going up on the outskirts, more people on the streets. The Arizona Territory was getting civilized whether it wanted to be or not. He made his way to the trading post run by a man named Pete Hendricks, someone Logan had dealt with for years and trusted as much as he trusted anyone. Pete greeted him with enthusiasm. "Logan Everett, thought you might have died up on that mountain. Been too long." "Just busy," Logan replied easily. "Got some good pelts this time, couple of bearskins you'll want to see." They dickered over prices, both enjoying the familiar dance of negotiation. When the trading was done and Logan had credit for supplies, he asked casually, "What's the news in town?" "Anything interesting happening?" Pete leaned in, always eager to gossip. "Plenty. You hear about the freight wagon that got hit couple weeks back? Driver and guard murdered, whole load stolen. Companies offering a reward for whoever did it." "No, I hadn't heard. Any idea who it was?" "There's talk, but nothing proven. Some folks think it was Apaches, but I doubt it. More likely it was that Garrett Moss and his crew. They've been spending money like water lately, and everyone knows they're bad news." Logan kept his expression neutral. "Moss still around then?" "Oh yeah. He's been working that claim he got from the poor miner who died a month or so back. Peterson, I think the name was. Wife disappeared, probably died out in the desert. Sad business." "Very sad," Logan agreed quietly. "The law doing anything about Moss?" Pete snorted. "You kidding? Marshall's office doesn't want to touch him. Moss has friends in Santa Fe, or so he claims, and the local deputies are more interested in their poker games than actual law enforcement." Logan absorbed this, his mind working. If the local law would not act, they would need another approach. "I'm staying at the boarding house for a few days," he told Pete. "If you hear anything more about that freight robbery, I'd appreciate you letting me know. I'm friendly with some of the Apache bands up in the mountains, and they get blamed for too much as it is." "Fair enough," Pete agreed. "I'll keep my ears open." Logan spent the rest of the day moving around town carefully, listening to conversations in the general store and the feed shop, avoiding the saloons where Moss and his men were likely to be. By evening, he had a good picture of the situation. Moss was confident, spending freely, and showing no signs of worry about being caught. His men were similarly bold, wearing their stolen goods openly. The law was indeed uninterested in pursuing them, whether from corruption, fear, or simple laziness. He met Penelope the next day at noon in a grove of cottonwoods outside town, near an old mission that had been abandoned years before. She was dressed in men's clothes as planned, her hair hidden under a hat, and from a distance she could pass. Up close, Logan could still see the delicate lines of her face, the feminine curve of her jaw, but it would do if she was careful. Learn anything? She asked immediately. He filled her in on what he had discovered. Penelope listened intently, her mind clearly working through possibilities. So we can't count on the law, she said. We need to force their hand. If we can get proof that connects Moss to the freight robbery and we take it directly to the freight company rather than the marshal, they can put pressure on from Santa Fe. Make it impossible for the local law to ignore. That's the idea, Logan agreed. But getting proof means getting that watch from Jake Miller. He's been seen wearing it in the saloons. I've been thinking about ways to get it. We steal it, Penelope said simply. Logan looked at her in surprise. What? We steal it? You said Miller gets drunk at the saloons. We wait until he's too drunk to notice, then we take it. Clean and simple. It's also dangerous. If he catches us, if any of Moss's men see you, this ends badly. You have a better idea, Penelope challenged. Logan had to admit he did not. They discussed the details, refining the plan. That night, they would enter town separately again. Logan would go to the largest saloon, the Silver Dollar, and see if Miller was there. If he was, and if he was drinking, Logan would send word to Penelope, who would be waiting nearby. At the right moment, she would create a distraction while Logan lifted the watch. It was risky and dependent on luck, but it was the best chance they had. They spent the afternoon preparing, going over every possible thing that could go wrong and how to handle it. When evening came, Penelope squeezed Logan's hand tightly before letting go. Be careful, she said fiercely. Come back to me. Always, Logan promised. I love you too. They separated, Logan heading into town openly while Penelope circled around to the back streets, keeping to the shadows. Logan entered the Silver Dollar and ordered a whiskey, surveying the room. It was crowded and noisy, perfect for their purposes. And there, at a corner table playing cards and drinking heavily, was Jake Miller. The man was loud and crude, laughing too hard at his own jokes. And there, glinting on his vest, was a gold watch chain. Logan worked his way closer casually, nursing his drink and watching the card game. Miller was losing badly and drinking more with each lost hand. Another hour and he would be useless, unable to notice if someone took his pants, let alone his watch. Logan slipped out to signal Penelope, who was waiting in the agreed spot. He's there and he's getting drunk fast, Logan told her. Another hour, maybe less. You remember the plan. I come in dressed as a soiled dove. I stumble into him drunk. I make a scene. In the confusion, you get the watch. Then I storm out, you leave separately, and we meet back at the mission. Logan did not like sending her into a saloon full of drunk men, even for a few minutes. But Penelope looked determined, and he had to trust her. They had a few ladies' items Pete had let Logan buy at the trading post that morning, items he had claimed were for an Apache woman he knew. Penelope had used them to approximate the dress of a working girl, with her hair loose and her face painted with berry stain. You look the part, Logan admitted. But be careful. Some of those men won't be gentle if they think you're really a working girl. I'll be in and out in 5 minutes, Penelope promised, and I'll have you watching my back. They waited the full hour, then Penelope took a deep breath and entered the saloon. Logan followed a minute later, returning to his spot at the bar where he could see the whole room. Penelope wove through the crowd, playing drunk and careless. She was good at it, he realized with surprise. She lurched and giggled and let men grab at her waist as she passed, slipping away from them with practiced ease. She made her way to Miller's table and stumbled, falling against him hard enough to knock over his drink. Miller roared with anger, jumping up and grabbing her by the arm. Penelope screeched and pulled away, and suddenly everyone was watching them. In the confusion, Logan moved like a snake, his hand flashing out to snag the watch chain. The watch came free cleanly and Logan palmed it, stepping back into the crowd. Penelope was still making a scene, yelling at Miller about manhandling her, drawing every eye in the room. The saloon owner was coming over to break it up, and Logan saw his moment. He slipped toward the door and out into the night, the watch heavy in his pocket. A few minutes later, Penelope came storming out the front door, playing her part to the end. She walked quickly down the street and around the corner, then broke into a run. Logan caught up with her 2 blocks away, and they hurried through the dark streets toward the edge of town. No one seemed to be following them. Once they reached the safety of the cottonwood grove, they both stopped to catch their breath. "Did you get it?" Penelope gasped. Logan pulled out the watch, holding it up to catch the moonlight. It was gold, expensive, with initials engraved on the back. "I got it," he confirmed. "You were amazing in there. Where did you learn to act like that?" "I was terrified the whole time," Penelope admitted, then laughed shakily. "But it worked. We actually did it." They examined the watch more closely. The initials were JD, and there was a date engraved below them. This was clearly a treasured personal item, exactly the sort of thing that could be identified. They had their evidence. "Tomorrow we take this to the freight company office," Logan said. "We tell them we found it being worn by Jake Miller. We describe Miller and his associates, including Garrett Moss, and we collect that reward. The freight company will take it from there. They'll have the resources and the connections to force prosecution even if the local law doesn't want to cooperate. And then it's over," Penelope said. "Moss goes to jail or gets hanged for murder and robbery, and we're free. We can go back to the mountain and live our lives. And maybe get properly married," Logan added, pulling her close. "No more hiding, no more running, just us and the life we want to build." Penelope kissed him fiercely. "Yes, all of that. Let's finish this." They spent the night at the mission ruins, not risking entering town again until morning. When the sun rose, they made their way to the freight company office, a solid building on the main street with the name Prescott Freight painted on the front. A serious-looking clerk greeted them, and Logan asked to speak with the manager about the reward being offered. They were ushered into a back office where a middle-aged man with mutton chops and sharp eyes introduced himself as Henry Prescott, owner of the company. Logan laid out the facts simply and clearly. His companion, a young man named Paul, had witnessed a group of men wearing goods that seemed too fine for their station. One in particular, matching Jake Miller's description, had been wearing this watch. Logan produced it and laid it on the desk. Prescott picked up the watch and his face went pale. "These initials," he said hoarsely. "This was John Davis's watch. His father gave it to him. His wife described it to me when she asked if any of his effects had been recovered from the robbery site. Where did you get this?" "Jake Miller was wearing it openly at the Silver Dollar Saloon last night," Logan said. "He's an associate of a man named Garrett Moss. I believe Moss and his gang are responsible for the robbery and the deaths of your driver and guard." Prescott's hand tightened on the watch until his knuckles were white. "Garrett Moss. I've heard the name. He's been working a mining claim outside town. The marshal said he had no evidence to connect Moss to the robbery." "Now you have evidence," Logan pointed out. "This watch connects Miller directly to John Davis. Miller is known to work with Moss. That should be enough for the territorial marshal to investigate, even if the local law won't." "You're damned right it is," Prescott said grimly. He stood and went to a safe, extracting $200 in gold coins. "This is the reward, as promised. But I want to hire you gentlemen for something else as well. I want you to testify to where you found this watch, to identify the man wearing it. I'll pay another $100 each if you'll come to Santa Fe when this goes to trial." Logan glanced at Penelope, who nodded slightly. We'll testify, Logan agreed. But there's more you should know. Moss is also wanted for the murder of a miner named Samuel Peterson about 6 weeks ago. He killed Peterson to steal his mining claim. Peterson's widow witnessed the murder but has been in hiding, afraid Moss would kill her too. She can also testify against him. Then we have him, Prescott said with satisfaction. Multiple murders, robbery, theft. Even Moss's supposed friends in Santa Fe won't be able to protect him from that. Where is this widow? Is she safe? She's safe, Logan assured him. And she'll come forward when the time is right. First, we need Moss and his men arrested. Can you make that happen? The territorial marshal owes me favors, and I have friends in the governor's office. Yes, I can make it happen. Give me 2 days to get the right people here from Santa Fe. In the meantime, you and your friend should stay out of sight. If Moss gets wind of this, he'll run or worse. They agreed and left the freight office with the reward money heavy in their pockets. $400 was more than many people earned in a year. It was enough to buy supplies for years, to improve the cabin, to build the life they wanted. But more importantly, they had set in motion the justice Samuel and John Davis deserved. They holed up at the old mission for 2 days, taking turns keeping watch and waiting for word from Prescott. Logan used the time to teach Penelope more about tracking and wilderness skills, but mostly they talked about the future. They planned improvements to the cabin, discussed whether to get goats for milk and cheese, debated the merits of enlarging the garden plot. They talked about children, agreeing they both wanted a family, but would wait at least a year to let Penelope recover fully from everything she had been through. They talked about marriage, deciding they would have a simple ceremony when enough time had passed for propriety's sake, maybe asking Curuk to witness it along with Pete from the trading post. On the afternoon of the second day, a boy came running to the mission with a message from Prescott. The territorial marshal had arrived with deputies. Moss and his entire gang had been arrested that morning without incident, caught sleeping off a night of drinking. They were being held in the territorial jail, and formal charges would be filed the next day. Prescott requested that Logan and Paul come to give their statements. Logan and Penelope went to the freight office, where the marshal was waiting. He was a hard-faced man in his 50s named Thomas Wright, with the look of someone who had seen too much but still cared about his job. They gave their statements about finding the watch, and Wright took down every detail carefully. "I'll need you to testify when this goes to trial," Wright said. "Probably in about 2 months. Can you be available?" "We'll be there," Logan promised. "But there's something else. The witness to Samuel Peterson's murder is ready to come forward now that Moss is in custody. Peterson, the miner Moss supposedly bought a claim from." Wright consulted his notes. "Moss claims Peterson sold him the claim before dying of fever. He has a bill of sale, signed and witnessed." "The bill of sale is a forgery," Logan said firmly. "Peterson was murdered by Moss and his men. His widow saw it happen. She's been in hiding because Moss's men hunted her, trying to silence her." Wright looked skeptical. "This widow, where is she? Why didn't she come forward before now?" Penelope stood up and removed her hat, letting her hair fall free. "Because I was terrified, Marshal Wright. I watched them kill my husband in cold blood. Then they chased me for days through the wilderness, trying to kill me too. I nearly died before I found help. I've been in hiding ever since, waiting for it to be safe to come forward." Wright stared at her, reassessing everything. "You're Samuel Peterson's widow. You're the woman everyone assumed was dead." "I'm Penelope Peterson, yes, and I'm very much alive. And I'm ready to testify that Garrett Moss murdered my husband to steal his mining claim. I can identify Moss and 2 of his men, Daniel Cross and Jake Miller. I heard them planning to kill me to silence me. They destroyed my life, Marshal. I want justice." Wright sat back, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Mrs. Peterson, you just made my job a lot easier. With your testimony, we can charge Moss with murder. Combined with the freight robbery, he's looking at the noose. I'll need your full statement, every detail you can remember." Penelope gave her statement, reliving the horrible day Samuel died, the fear and flight that followed. Logan sat beside her the whole time, his presence giving her strength. When she was done, Wright looked at her with respect. "You're a brave woman, Mrs. Peterson. A lot of people would have stayed hidden, too afraid to come forward. Because of you, a dangerous man is going to face justice." "Not just because of me," Penelope said, looking at Logan. "Logan saved my life and helped me find the courage to do this. Without him, Moss would have gotten away with everything." Wright looked between them, noting the way they sat close together, the way Logan's hand rested protectively on Penelope's shoulder. "I see. Well, you've both done a good thing here. The territory needs more people willing to stand up against men like Moss." They left the freight office as the sun was setting, walking through Tucson one last time before heading back to the mountain. Penelope was no longer disguised, walking openly as herself now that Moss was in jail. A few people stared, recognizing her as the supposedly dead widow, but no one bothered them. Logan kept her close, watchful until they were clear of town. They camped that night in the canyon where they had stayed before, this time without the weight of fear and planning hanging over them. It was done. Moss was arrested, justice was in motion, and they were free. They lay under the stars, wrapped in each other's arms, talking quietly about everything and nothing. "What do we do for the next 2 months until the trial?" Penelope asked. "Just go back to the cabin and wait." "We live," Logan said simply. "We work on the cabin, we hunt and gather for winter, we enjoy being together without constantly looking over our shoulders. We just live, Penelope. Isn't that what we've wanted?" "Yes," she said softly. "That's exactly what I want, to just live with you in peace." They returned to the mountain the next day, climbing the hidden trails that led to Logan's cabin. When they arrived, the sight of the sturdy building nestled among the pines filled Penelope with unexpected emotion. This was home now, more than any house in Pennsylvania or Tucson had ever been. This was where she had found safety and love and herself. The next 2 months passed in a blur of contentment. They worked together to improve the cabin, adding shutters to the windows and reinforcing the roof for winter. Logan taught Penelope to cure hides and smoke meat, to identify useful plants and prepare them as medicine. They hunted together, with Penelope becoming quite skilled with both rifle and bow. They read to each other in the evenings and made love under the quilts when the nights grew cold. They laughed together, teased each other, occasionally argued about small things and made up quickly. Kuruk and Takota visited twice, bringing news and trade goods. They seemed pleased to see Logan happy, and they treated Penelope with warmth and respect. Takota taught her how to make better moccasins, and Kuruk shared stories of the old days before the white settlers came. In return, Penelope taught them a card game her father had loved, and Logan traded ammunition and steel for herbs and information about game movements. One evening about 6 weeks after their return to the mountain, Logan took Penelope's hand and led her outside. The stars were brilliant in the clear mountain air, thousands of them scattered across the dark sky like diamonds. He pulled her close and said, "Marry me." "I know we said we'd wait, but I don't want to wait anymore. I don't need a church or a preacher or anyone's approval. I just need you, and I want to make promises to you under these stars with this mountain as our witness." Penelope felt tears spring to her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you, Logan Everett. Right here, right now, in the way that matters most. Before God and this beautiful wild land, yes." They spoke vows to each other there in the starlight, simple promises of love and loyalty and partnership. They pledged to honor each other, to support each other, to build a life together based on truth and respect. When they kissed to seal their promises, Penelope felt something settle into place in her heart, a sense of rightness and completion she had never experienced before. "You're my wife now," Logan said, his voice rough with emotion. "In every way that matters, you're mine and I'm yours." "Husband," Penelope said, testing out the word. It felt good, right? "My husband, I like the sound of that." They went back inside and made love with new tenderness, new commitment. Afterward, Logan pulled out a small box Penelope had never seen before. Inside was a simple gold band, worn smooth with age. "This was my grandmother's ring," he said. "My mother gave it to me before I went to war, told me to give it to the woman who made me want to be a better man. I thought I'd lost my chance when Margaret left, thought I'd never have reason to give this to anyone. But then you came into my life, and suddenly I had reason for everything again." Penelope held out her hand and Logan slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. "I'll treasure it," she promised, "and I'll treasure you always." 2 weeks later, they packed supplies and made the trip to Santa Fe for the trial. It was a larger town than Tucson, more civilized, with brick buildings and actual paved streets in places. The trial was held in a real courthouse, with a proper judge and lawyers and a jury of 12 men. Penelope wore the brown dress Logan had made her, and Logan wore his best clothes, looking uncomfortable but determined. The trial lasted 3 days. Penelope testified first, describing in clear, steady voice how Moss and his men had murdered Samuel. She identified Moss, Cross, and Miller without hesitation. The defense lawyer tried to shake her story, suggesting she might be mistaken or lying for revenge, but Penelope held firm. She had Logan's steady presence in the courtroom giving her strength, and she would not be intimidated. Logan testified about finding the watch on Miller, describing the man in detail, and placing him at the Silver Dollar Saloon. Pete Hendricks from the Trading Post testified that Moss had been spending freely and acting suspicious. Marshall Wright testified about the evidence and the arrest. Other witnesses placed Moss and his men near the site of the freight robbery at the right time. The defense was weak, relying on Moss's claim that he had bought Peterson's claim legitimately, and suggesting the freight robbery must have been committed by someone else, despite the watch evidence. The jury saw through it easily. After only 2 hours of deliberation, they returned with guilty verdicts on all counts: 2 counts of murder, robbery, and theft. The judge sentenced Moss to hang, with the execution scheduled for 2 weeks later. Cross and Miller received 20 years of hard labor each. The other 2 men in the gang, who had not been directly connected to the murders, received 10 years each. When the verdict was read, Penelope felt something release in her chest, a weight she had been carrying since the day Samuel died. Justice had been done. It would not bring Samuel back, but it mattered. It mattered that Moss would pay for what he had done, that the law had worked, that evil had not triumphed. Outside the courthouse, Henry Prescott shook both their hands warmly. "Thank you both. John Davis and Samuel Peterson can rest easier now, and their widows can live without fear." He pressed an envelope into Logan's hand. "The additional compensation we agreed on plus a little extra. You both earned it." They collected their money and returned to the boarding house where they were staying. That night, Penelope asked Logan if he wanted to attend the execution. "To see it finished," she said. "To witness Moss pay the ultimate price." Logan was quiet for a long time, then shook his head. "No. I saw enough death in the war to last several lifetimes. Knowing he's been brought to justice is enough. I don't need to watch him die." "I don't either," Penelope admitted, relieved. I just wanted to know if you did. What I want is to go home, Logan said, pulling her close. Back to our mountain, back to our life. I want to put all of this behind us and focus on the future. Our future. They left Santa Fe the next morning, riding together on Logan's horse with their supplies packed behind them. The journey back to the mountain took 4 days, and with each mile Penelope felt lighter. This chapter was closed. Samuel's death had been avenged, Moss would trouble them no more, and ahead lay nothing but possibility. When they finally reached the cabin, both of them sighed with relief. They were home, truly home together. The afternoon was spent unpacking and settling back in, making coffee and just enjoying being in their own space again. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Logan said, "I've been thinking about the future. We have the reward money, which is more than enough to improve this place and stock up for years to come. But I want to know what you want, Penelope. Do you want to stay here, live this isolated life? Or do you want something different? A house in town, neighbors, society? I'll give you whatever you want, build whatever life you need to be happy." Penelope thought carefully before answering. "I love it here," she said slowly. "I love the peace and the beauty and the simplicity. I love waking up to birdsong instead of wagon wheels, seeing stars instead of building walls. I love the way we live, working together, depending on each other. But I also think we don't have to be completely isolated. We can have both, can't we? This is our home base, but trips to town occasionally, friends like Kuruk and Pete, connection to the wider world when we want it." "That sounds perfect," Logan said with relief. "That's exactly what I want too, solitude by choice, not isolation by necessity." "And someday," Penelope added shyly, "there will be children. This cabin will need to be bigger, we'll need more space. But they'll grow up strong and free here, learning to love and respect this land the way we do." "Children," Logan repeated, his eyes warm. "I like the sound of that. Not yet, but someday soon. A family, a real family, built on love and choice." The months that followed were perhaps the happiest of Penelope's life. Winter came to the mountain, bringing snow that transformed the landscape into something magical. She learned to move through the white world on snowshoes Logan made, to track animals by their prints, to appreciate the fierce beauty of winter storms. The cabin stayed warm, and they had plenty of food stored. They spent long evenings by the fire, reading and talking and making plans. By the time spring arrived, melting the snow and bringing new green life to the mountain, Penelope was fairly certain she was pregnant. She waited to tell Logan until she was sure, wanting to be certain before she shared the news. When she finally told him one morning in April, his face lit up with joy so pure it made her cry. "A baby," he said wonderingly, placing his hand on her still flat stomach. "Our baby, are you scared?" "A little," Penelope admitted, "but mostly I'm excited. This baby will be born into love, into a real family. That's more than many children get." Logan was immediately protective, insisting she take more rest, do less heavy work. Penelope rolled her eyes but appreciated his concern. She felt strong and healthy, her body well prepared for this from months of mountain living. She continued her normal activities throughout the summer, only slowing down as her belly grew larger. In August, they made a trip to Tucson to buy supplies they would need for the birth. Pete helped them gather what Penelope thought was necessary, and Logan also consulted with an Apache woman who was experienced as a midwife. She agreed to come stay with them when the time was near, in return for trade goods and Logan's promise to hunt elk for her family's winter stores. The baby came on a clear October morning, arriving with remarkable speed once labor truly started. The Apache midwife, whose name was Amma, coached Penelope through it with calm competence. Logan stayed close, holding Penelope's hand, whispering encouragement and love. When their son finally emerged into the world, red-faced and screaming, both parents cried with joy and relief. "He's perfect," Penelope said, holding the baby against her chest. "Look at him, Logan. He's perfect." "He looks like you," Logan said, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "He has your eyes." They named him Samuel Robert Everett, honoring Penelope's first husband while giving him Logan's last name. Penelope had worried that Logan might be uncomfortable with this, but he insisted. "Samuel Peterson gave you life and brought you west," Logan said. "Without him, you never would have been here, never would have found me." Honoring his memory honors the path that led us to each other. Little Samuel was a good baby, healthy and strong. He nursed well and slept in reasonable stretches, and both parents were besotted with him. Logan proved to be a natural father, patient and gentle with his son, singing to him and telling him stories even though he was too young to understand. Penelope watched her husband with their child and fell in love with him all over again. The winter after Samuel's birth was challenging with a baby to care for, but they managed. The cabin had been expanded before the birth, with Logan adding a second room that served as a nursery of sorts. They kept the baby warm and safe, and he thrived despite the harsh conditions outside. By the time Samuel was walking and talking, Penelope was pregnant again. This time they knew what to expect, and the birth was even easier. Their daughter arrived in June, tiny and delicate with dark hair like Logan's. They named her Margaret Rose after Logan's lost love and Penelope's mother. Logan held his daughter and wept. All the old pain and guilt around Margaret finally laid to rest as he welcomed this new Margaret into the world. 2 children seemed like enough for a few years, and Penelope and Logan focused on raising them. Samuel was adventurous and bold, always wanting to explore. Margaret was quieter, more thoughtful, content to sit and observe. They were different but clearly devoted to each other. Logan taught Samuel to track and hunt as he grew older, while Penelope taught both children to read and write, determined they would be educated even in their remote home. When Samuel was 8 and Margaret was 6, Penelope found herself pregnant once more. This baby was a surprise, but a welcome one. Another boy, born in March, who they named Joseph Peter after no one in particular, just because they liked the names. Joseph was a happy, easy baby who seemed to find everything amusing. Life on the mountain was full but good. Logan had become a respected figure among the Apache bands that moved through the area, known for his fairness and wisdom. Penelope had learned their language and some of their customs, earning her own respect. Their children grew up speaking English, Spanish, and some Apache, comfortable with all the people who passed through their lives. In town, which they visited 3 or 4 times a year for supplies and news, they were known as the Mountain Family, a little odd perhaps but generally well-liked. Pete Hendricks became a sort of unofficial uncle to the children, always having candy for them when they came to trade. Marshall Wright, who had retired and become a judge, made a point of greeting them warmly whenever he saw them, remembering the role they had played in bringing Garrett Moss to justice. Penelope never forgot Samuel Peterson or the horrible day she had lost him. But the pain had faded with time and healing, becoming a sad memory rather than an open wound. She visited his grave when they went to Tucson, usually taking flowers and telling him about the children and the life she had built. She thanked him for bringing her west, for setting in motion the chain of events that had led her to Logan. She hoped he had found peace, wherever he was. Logan kept his promise to give Penelope the life she wanted. The cabin was comfortable and well-built, expanded over the years to accommodate their growing family. They had chickens and goats, a productive garden, and plenty of wild game. They had books and music, visitors and solitude, hard work and simple pleasures. They had love, steady and deep and real, the kind that grew stronger with time rather than fading. On their 10th anniversary of the night they made vows to each other under the stars. Logan took Penelope to the same spot. The children were sleeping safely in the cabin under the watchful eye of Amma, who had become a good friend over the years. Logan and Penelope stood together looking up at the brilliant stars, older now, weathered by mountain living but happy. "You have any regrets?" Logan asked quietly. "About the life you've lived, the choices you made." Penelope thought about it honestly. She thought about her parents and her first marriage, about Samuel's death and her desperate flight, about finding Logan's cabin in the darkness. She thought about the hard work and the simple joys, about raising children in the wilderness, about the path her life had taken. "No regrets," she said finally. "There are things I wish had been different. I wish Samuel hadn't died the way he did, but I can't regret where I ended up. I can't regret finding you, building this life with you. Every hard thing I went through led me here, and here is exactly where I want to be." "I love you," Logan said, pulling her close. "I loved you the night you knocked on my door desperate and afraid. I love you even more now, knowing how strong you are, how good, how perfect for me." "I love you too," Penelope replied. "You saved my life in more ways than one. You gave me safety and protection, yes, but you also gave me purpose and joy. You made me whole again when I thought I was broken forever." They kissed under the stars, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from tragedy and chance. Behind them in the cabin, their children slept peacefully, safe and loved. Around them, the mountain stood eternal and strong, witness to their love and their lives. Years continued to pass, each one adding its own joys and challenges. Samuel grew into a young man much like his father, strong and capable and kind. He eventually married an Apache woman named Kai, bringing her to the mountain and building his own cabin nearby. Margaret married a man from Tucson, a school teacher named Daniel, and they settled in town but visited often, bringing their children to spend summers on the mountain. Joseph, the youngest, showed a talent for art and spent his time sketching the landscapes and wildlife, eventually becoming known for his paintings of the Arizona wilderness. Logan and Penelope grew old together, their hair turning gray, their bodies bearing the marks of hard work and good living. They had health and happiness, grandchildren and purpose. They were pillars of their small community, people others turned to for wisdom and help. On a summer evening when Penelope was 62 and Logan was 68, they sat on the porch they had added to the cabin years before, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and red. They held hands, comfortable in the silence that long companionship brings. "It's been a good life," Penelope said softly, "better than I ever imagined it could be." "The best life," Logan agreed, "because I lived it with you." They sat together as darkness fell and the stars emerged, the same stars that had witnessed their vows all those years ago. Inside the cabin, they could hear their youngest grandson laughing at something Samuel was saying. The sound of family, the sound of life continuing. Penelope leaned her head on Logan's shoulder and felt complete peace. She had survived tragedy and fear, had found love and purpose, had built a family and a life that mattered. The desperate widow who had pounded on a mountain man's door all those years ago was gone, transformed into someone stronger and happier than she had ever thought possible. Logan pressed a kiss to the top of her head, a gesture he had made thousands of times over their decades together. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the night deepen, surrounded by love and life and the wild, beautiful land that had given them everything. The story that had begun with desperation and fear had become one of love and fulfillment, of two people finding each other and choosing each other every day for the rest of their lives. And in the end, that was all anyone could ask for: to love and be loved, to build something good and lasting, to leave the world better than you found it. Logan and Penelope had done all of that and more. Their story was complete, their ending happy, their legacy secure in the children and grandchildren who would carry on their values and their love for this untamed land. They had lived well and loved deeply, and that was the best any story could hope to be.